The virus tried to surround them, but they couldn't get anywhere near Vanquisher's radiance. The two landed with a thud, got the evil program's attention. It created an extra aura of darkness around the area that allowed the creatures to get close safely. Vanquisher kicked whenever the viruses got close and shot forked lightning when he'd get the viruses at distance, but they were close to 1 billion now, and it would be the end within moments. Attacks were glancing off Vanquisher, but a few were close to chipping his armored scales off. Morton summoned back his two-handed sword and did his best, chopping 2 at a time, but calling it a last-ditch effort was an understatement. Vanquish also, realizing that his home was nearly destroyed, fused with Morton. This turned him into Morton the Vanquisher, who had thick, sleek greenish-yellow and red Kieran armor, and Morton's two-handed sword blazed with fire energy and grew. Morton felt his body take on extra gravitas and strength, able to now wield the larger sword without throwing himself off balance. Morton the Vanquisher switched to an offensive stance, slashing at his foes. Each swipe took down 10 and 20 at a time, sending forked lightning through even more. Then the combined duo turned to face the evil Cat Necromancer program. The Cat Necromancer and Morton Vanquisher stared at each other, sizing each other up, but neither saying a word. Then there was an explosive sound off in the distance. The barn at their retreat had exploded. Morton the Vanquisher turned around to face the barn without thinking, turning his back to the replication program. What he saw in the brief second was a giant spider the size of the building. It was made up of 100,000 tiny spiders stomping through the ocean of viruses. Morton the Vanquisher turned back in time to see his adversary close the distance in 3 bounds, tackling Morton the Vanquisher and knocking the fiery sword from their grip with his staff. The nearest viruses immediately swarmed the massive spider and attempted to corrupt and destroy her, but it was no use. Pieces of the spider would break off, taking the fight to any virus who tried to infect it, the spider's long legs keeping its body safe from the gnashing of the teeth and clawing of the viruses below, trying to occupy and corrupt the spider's portion of the hard drive. The spiders had prepared mitigation, and they were hatching new tiny egg sacs in the hundreds from the giant blister spider, creating 10,000 new baby spiders every couple minutes. Morton had never seen such a program as this, but responses of force now came naturally to him through Vanquisher's help. He grabbed the staff and punted the cat program into the sea of his own viruses. The cat, gold armor, staff, and all went flying in an arc, 50 feet in their virtual space, sending viruses everywhere trying to find new space to be. Morton the Vanquisher outstretched his hand and the sword appeared and burst into flames again. In the distance, the spider was gleefully globbing up the little viruses as if they were bite-sized snacks that it couldn't get enough of. From his distance and angle, the giant blister appeared to be moving extremely slow, due to his normal reference of spiders. However, Morton knew that due to his size was actually moving very fast. The giant spider turned around at one point, and Morton the Vanquisher saw his company's branding once again and felt happy to have friends. Closer in Morton's field of view, though, a deluge of viruses rushed blindingly fast at him, shoved powerfully by the Necrocat program. What looked like 5,000 viruses melted away as Morton the Vanquisher leveled his sword at the rush. It was a distraction, though, and the cat landed, parrying Morton the Vanquisher's fiery sword. The two traded blows, but every time Morton the Vanquisher gained ground, legions of viruses were at the Necrocat's disposal to launch at him. Morton the Vanquisher would never give up, though. The two fought for close to an hour, with neither side able to land a decisive blow. Morton the Vanquisher would clear out 100 viruses, only for more to pile in nearby from the radio tower. Blister would eat thousands and sacrifice parts of itself to get the virus off its towering legs, but continued getting weaker, unable to keep up the pace, each attack whittling Blister's towering height closer to virus level. Slowly but surely, though, Morton could feel like he was getting a little bit faster, like he could remember a little bit more. Before long, Morton the Vanquisher was generating large fiery waves towards the cat, knowing he would miss and eliminate 1,000 viruses behind the Necrocat. The cat would nimbly dodge and continue its taunts. Morton was doing the math and trying to free up enough room to load his biggest program, from his command center if it still functioned. They fought like this for several more minutes until the CAT program got tired of toying with Morton and his special armor and went in for the kill. Morton had been waiting for this, though, and separated from Vanquisher in time for him to dash away like an injured animal. It had been hard to convince this strategy to Vanquisher, but Morton explained that sometimes the best strategy is retreating. You can still maintain your honor if it's a sound strategy, Morton had told Vanquisher. Vanquisher understood this and took off, as if he was injured. This made the CAT program the happiest program on the whole entire internet, and it bolted after Vanquisher, thinking it was going to get its kill. The Necrocat counting on its overwhelming burst of speed to overcome Vanquisher's endurance. Morton slipped off into his command center and started wading through the construct during the distraction. A lot of the viruses had been cleared out, as the Cat Necromancer had been using them as disposable fodder. Sure, there were still hundreds of millions, but this cleared out the nearest ones. Morton saw some of his monitors had started working again, and saw the giant blister spider was slowly but steadily getting whittled down. Morton's monitor put the spider at roughly 35% strength. It wouldn't last much longer and was partially engulfed by the virus. Morton had to hurry. Morton quickly cycled through network layers and entered in the instructions to his console and watched his final program begin to load. It barely had enough cycles to process, though, barely freed up by the last hour of efforts to get ahead. Outside, the computer began to wake up from sleep mode, and a big bright sun began to come out. Morton had told the presentation layer of the network protocols, which were still in effect, to switch to super bright daylight when the system woke up. Then all Morton had to do was wake the system back up. Then he told the system to wake up, which kicked the environment out of nighttime mode and into normal mode, as if Walden was trying to use the machine. The system was still safely locked, of course, but the computer was wide awake now. Morton looked at his monitors to see that the cat, which he saw looked more like a gigantic panther, had only then caught up with Vanquisher. They were of equal match as they kicked and clawed and bit at each other. The bright sun wore down the cat, though, and it got weak and tired, being significantly more powerful when the computer was asleep and in the dark. With one last kick, Vanquisher sent the ancient-looking cat flying back to where Morton was. Morton scrambled out of the base and grabbed the giant cat by the scruff of its neck and dragged it into a quarantine container. The cat's armor and staff disappeared, long since discarded along with the program's abandoned replication routine. The cat flailed around and whimpered as if it had been caught running outside when it was actually an indoor cat. The sun burned away all the bad programs, and Vanquisher zapped away to check on the farm. Morton frantically searched on the monitors for Blister, not seeing her anymore after being nearly overtaken by the viruses. Cleanup. Early morning, day 2. The radio tower appeared destroyed from the fighting. Morton figured this was for the best, since it was likely the issue would immediately resurface the second there was functional or operational opportunity. By outside influence. The fiery wall was down, but Morton knew he could fix this with a reboot. Morton set a command on his security console to monitor the area where he thought the farm was, and it was in shambles. There was no Kieran or monks to be seen. It looked pretty much destroyed. Without much else to do, and needing to get the internal fiery wall up before any garbage tried to get through, Morton convinced the computer there was a mandatory software update scheduled and rebooted the machine. As Morton felt it powered down, he felt a little baby spider walking on his hand. It looked at him unblinkingly and with giant, loving eyelashes, and he smiled down at it as the system did its reboot cycle. Morton felt his subconscious in the boot sector watch the system shut down and power back up, and was confident none of the virus made it there. Guess it wasn't interested in the master boot records, Morton thought. As the system came back online, Morton appeared back at his command center, and the screens flicked on one at a time. He checked his little tablet, and all of his offensive and defensive programs were back online. Morton looked out his window so he could see it for himself, and the fiery wall burst dramatically into powerful and imposing flames. Morton stared hard at the radio tower. It was powered off right now because it always took significantly longer than everything else to turn on after a reboot. He was hoping it wouldn't turn back on. He looked at it through his monitors only to see tiny spiders crawling all over it. They appeared to be wrapping it up in spider webs. To Morton's worst fears, the tower powered up, and within moments, data started flowing back in. It was the virus again. The spiders were ready, though, and caught the inbound data in their webs. Morton wasn't sure how long this would last, as the speed of data coming in began to increase, and would likely soon overload the web crawler's capacity to identify and render the data inert to the rest of the system. Morton checked his other monitoring systems and was getting a prompt from an unknown program to run diagnostic and repair. Morton saw the monastery was in shambles, and that the monks were out, and about trying to get it put back together. Morton approved the request right away and gave it the maximum priority he could, without sacrificing Blister's efforts. Morton checked back on the radio tower as it accumulated more junk data that the little Blisters were catching as fast as they could, wrapping up and webbing and then tossing down. Morton surmised that it was the very first piece of data over and over, and it was showing up to the other system as a failure since it could never verify receipt. That wasn't deterring whoever was trying to send it, though, as they kept trying to send it faster and faster, trying to overwhelm the defensive efforts. The system had completed booting everything else and allocating full resources to this errant Wi-Fi process going on. To make matters worse, whoever was attacking had fully recovered their own system and started the process back up from the beginning. However, now it was scaling up to full power, not bothering with subterfuge anymore. Morton looked back at the monastery. It had fully rendered the diagnostic and repair tools for the monks, and the monks were all hard at work with these helpful tools. As they steadily worked away, a wireframe began to materialize in the stables. Morton frantically looked back at the spiders, and they were losing the battle with the garbage data flying into the radio tower. Before long, the radio tower would give up and start letting it all pile up and accumulate everywhere again. Stupid radio thought all of this was legitimate traffic. It was incredibly frustrating to Morton, however, no way to shut it off.